This episode is adapted from a clinician-written article on Mentalyc and brought to life in audio for therapists who prefer listening on the go.
That's right. This piece was written by Nuria Higuero Flores, psychologist, and we're just so excited to get to explore her perspective with you all today.
Absolutely. And for anyone who might be new to us, if you're not familiar with Mentalyc, it's a clinical intelligence platform really designed to support therapists with the heavy lift of documentation.
The heavy lift is right. It gets me thinking about another kind of lift. That feeling, have you ever had it? Where you're a few sessions in with a client, and there's this subtle drift. It's like you're both in the same boat, but you've started rowing in slightly different directions.
Oh, I know that feeling intimately. It's not a crisis, not yet, but there's a quiet misalignment. You think you're working on anxiety triggers, and the client thinks they're here to get advice on a career change. And suddenly you realize we never actually explicitly agreed on the destination.
Exactly. And that's where this whole topic of therapeutic contracts comes in. And I know when you hear the word contract, it sounds so sterile, so legalistic and cold, right?
Completely. It sounds like paperwork. It sounds like the boring administrative stuff you have to rush through to get to the real therapy. But the more I practice, the more I see the contract not as a rigid document, but as the very container that makes the real therapy possible.
Say more about that, the container. I like that. It's like what Winnicott talked about, right? Creating that safe space.
Precisely. Think about it. If a client comes to us, especially with something like deep-seated anxiety or trauma, their world might feel chaotic and unpredictable. The therapeutic space should be the one place that feels utterly reliable, knowing exactly when we'll meet, for how long, where, what confidentiality means. It's not just logistics. It's the foundation of safety. It's the four walls and the roof of the house before you can start decorating the inside.
That's such a powerful reframe. It's not a restriction, it's a structure that creates freedom. I had a client once, years ago, who terminated after maybe 4 sessions, and I was so confused. I thought things were going well. We had good rapport, and in the termination session, he finally said, I thought you would be telling me what to do, giving me a plan.
Oof. Misaligned expectations. The classic. And my heart just sinks hearing that because it's so common and it's so often preventable.
It was a huge learning moment for me. I realized my implicit contract that we would explore his patterns collaboratively was completely different from his implicit contract, which was that I was an expert who would provide a quick fix. We never had the explicit conversation to bridge that gap.
And that's the therapeutic gold in the contracting process itself. It's not just about setting terms. It's our first opportunity to model clear communication, to respect the client's autonomy by inviting them into the process, and to catch those exact kinds of misalignments before they lead to disappointment or rupture.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. Because I think we agree it's important, but what makes a good contract? It's not just one thing, right? It feels layered.
It's so layered. I really love the way Eric Byrne broke it down into 3 types. You have the administrative, the professional, and the psychological contract. And they all coexist.
Okay, I can already guess which one is which. The administrative one is the one we all know, and maybe don't love talking about? The money talk?
That's the one. It's the business contract, essentially. Session fees, cancellation policies, how scheduling works, insurance, the duration of sessions, all that practical stuff. And it can feel so awkward to discuss money, but avoiding it is a disservice to everyone. It creates resentment down the line if it's not crystal clear.
Oh, 100%. You don't want to be in a position where you're feeling frustrated about a late cancellation and the client is feeling confused about the policy because it was just buried in page 6 of the intake packet. Having that direct verbal conversation, it's a sign of respect, really.
It is. And it can vary so much by setting. If you're in an EAP setting, for example, that administrative contract is pretty set in stone, right? You might contract for 6 weekly sessions covered by the employer, and you have to be clear about what, if any, information gets reported back to the company, even if it's just anonymized outcome data.
Right. That's a very different frame than in private practice, where you have so much more flexibility to set those terms collaboratively with the client. Okay, so that's the administrative, the bones. What's the next layer? The professional contract.
hmm The professional contract is the purpose of the therapy. It's the what are we actually doing here and how are we going to do it? This is where we define the goals, the focus of the work. It's where you would have caught that misalignment with your client who was expecting a plan.
Ah, okay. So this is where we say something like, the goal of our work will be to explore the roots of your social anxiety and collaboratively develop coping strategies, rather than we're going to fix your anxiety. It's about the process, not just the outcome.
Exactly. It sets the expectation that this is a collaborative effort. I worked with a client once on anger management, and we were very explicit in our professional contract. We agreed that the work would involve looking at triggers, understanding the function of his anger, and practicing new responses. I made it clear that it wouldn't be about eliminating anger, which is a normal human emotion, but about changing his relationship to it.
That clarity is everything. Because then, when the work gets hard, when he has to sit with uncomfortable feelings, he's not surprised. He knows this is part of the deal. He opted in to this specific journey.
Right, and the professional contract isn't static. It has to be a living document. A client might come in for workplace confidence, and 3 months in, a major grief issue surfaces. We have to be able to pause and say, hey, it seems like the focus is shifting. Does it make sense for us to renegotiate our contract and turn our attention to this grief for a while?
I love that. The permission to renegotiate. It makes the whole process feel so much more human and responsive. Okay, so we have the administrative frame, the professional focus. What's the third one? The psychological contract?
Smiles. Ah, yes, the psychological contract. This is the big one. This is the layer of unspoken, unconscious expectations that both the client and the therapist bring into the room.
Ooh, okay. This is the juicy stuff. This is the subtext, the undercurrent.
This is the undercurrent. It's the client with a deep history of abandonment who unconsciously expects you to eventually find them too much and reject them. Or the client who sees you as a parental figure they finally want to please. It's all the transference and countertransference dynamics that are happening beneath the surface.
And on our side, too. The therapist who has a need to be the rescuer, the one who unconsciously wants the client to be a success story to validate their own competence. That stuff is so powerful and so hard to see when you're in it.
It is. The psychological contract isn't something you can write down and sign. Good therapy involves learning to recognize when these unconscious dynamics are at play and bringing them into the light, thoughtfully and gently. It's noticing, I'm feeling a strong pull to give you advice right now. I wonder what's happening between us, instead of just giving the advice.
It's so hard to catch our own side of that in the moment, though, our own patterns showing up in the room. It's why I found reflective tools to be so indispensable. After a tough session, being able to process what was really going on, it's essential. I've even been exploring how tech can help with that reflection. Like, after a session, using something like Alliance Genie to get a sense of the relational dynamics, it's fascinating. It can help surface those moments where my own rescuer tendency might have kicked in, just by showing me patterns in the alliance.
That's such a brilliant application of technology because it's not about replacing our clinical judgment, but augmenting our ability to reflect on it. Having something that can help you notice those subtle shifts in the alliance, those moments that define the psychological contract, that's an incredible support for a therapist. It's like having a supervisor for the relational piece, but one that's just for your own eyes.
Right. It helps you see the water you're swimming in, because that psychological contract, that's where so much of the healing or the rupture actually happens.
Quick pause here. If this part of the work, navigating those complex, unspoken layers, feels familiar, Mentalyc can help. Its AI-powered tools like the AI Note Taker support your documentation and clinical judgment, all while staying fully HIPAA and SOC 2 compliant. You can explore it for yourself at Mentalyc.com.
This also makes me think about how contracting isn't one size fits all. The way you contract with a client who is in crisis is totally different from how you'd contract with someone coming in for long-term existential exploration.
Oh, absolutely. There's this idea of a contracting matrix that I find really helpful. It looks at the client's needs. For instance, a single mother experiencing severe burnout, she might need a very clear, outcome-focused contract. We are going to meet for 8 sessions, and our goal is to identify 3 specific stress management techniques you can implement immediately. It's concrete, it's targeted.
Right. She needs tangible relief, and the contract should reflect that. But then you have another client who comes in and says, I have a great job, a great family, I should be happy, but I feel empty and I don't know why. You can't give that person an outcome-focused contract.
You can't. For that person, you need an exploratory contract. The agreement is something more like, our work will be to create a space to safely explore this feeling of unhappiness, to listen for the themes that emerge and to understand your inner world more deeply, without a predetermined destination.
The contract itself sets the tone. One is about doing, the other is about being. And culture plays such a huge role here too. This is something I think we, as clinicians trained in largely Western models, have to be so mindful of.
So critical. The very idea of an individual contract, focused on self-exploration, can be foreign in some cultures. The expectation might be more directive, that the therapist is a wise authority who will provide advice and solutions.
Or even the idea of confidentiality. I worked with a client from a collectivist culture where the family's involvement in healthcare decisions was the norm. My standard spiel about absolute individual confidentiality actually created discomfort for him. It felt isolating.
So what did you do? How did you navigate that?
We had to negotiate a modified contract. We talked about it openly. We agreed on what information he felt comfortable with me sharing if a family member joined a session and what was just for us. We co-created a boundary that respected both the therapeutic frame and his cultural values. It took time. It took a few sessions, actually.
And that's another key point. Contracting isn't always a one-and-done thing in the first session. Especially with traumatized clients, they may not have the capacity to build that trust and agree to a comprehensive contract right away. You might start with a minimal contract focused purely on safety and confidentiality, and then gradually expand it as the therapeutic relationship solidifies.
That makes so much sense. You build the container piece by piece as the client feels ready. It's not just about the client either. The setting makes a huge difference. We touched on agency work, but what about something like group therapy? That adds a whole new layer of complexity.
Oh, group is a whole other level, because your contract isn't just between you and each individual client. You also have to facilitate a contract among all the group members. Agreements about not interrupting, about maintaining confidentiality for everyone in the room, about how to handle conflict when it arises between members. It's a multi-directional contract.
And that group contract becomes a microcosm of the real world. The contracting process itself is a therapeutic intervention in how to be in a relationship with others. Wow, we've really expanded the definition from a simple document to this dynamic, multi-layered process. Which brings me to another point of confusion I sometimes see. The difference between a therapeutic contract and a therapeutic plan.
Yes, people use them interchangeably, but they are distinct. The contract, as we've been discussing, establishes the framework and the relationship. It answers questions like, how will we work together? And what are the boundaries of our relationship?
It's the how, the frame of the painting.
Exactly. The treatment plan, on the other hand, details the specific therapeutic approach for addressing the client's concerns. It's the what. It answers, what specific steps will we take to address your depression? Or what interventions will we use for your panic attacks?
So the contract might say, we will have 6 initial sessions to focus on managing your depression.
While the plan says, in sessions 1 and 2, we will use behavioral activation. In sessions 3 and 4, we'll introduce cognitive restructuring, and so on.
Precisely. The plan generally emerges from the assessment process and evolves more frequently as therapy progresses. The contract is the more stable foundation upon which the plan is built. And this is where our documentation becomes so critical, right? Keeping that golden thread clear.
Totally. And that's where I find the tools we have now to be so helpful. After having that initial contracting conversation, I can use the AI note taker to capture the key elements of our agreement, the goals, the frame we've set. And that information flows so seamlessly into building the first draft of the treatment plan. It ensures the plan is directly tied to the contract we just co-created. It keeps everything aligned from the very beginning.
That alignment is everything. It's clinical best practice, but it also just makes the work more effective and coherent for both you and the client. And speaking of modern tools, we have to talk about how all of this applies to online therapy. The whole game has changed.
It really has. The number of times I've had to contract for things I never would have imagined 5 years ago. Like, what is our plan if the Wi-Fi cuts out? Do I call you? Do you call me? Do we just try to log back in?
Right. That needs to be in the contract. What about privacy on their end? I now have a clause that says the client agrees to participate in sessions from a private, secure location where they cannot be overheard. You have to be explicit about it because their home is not your office.
That's a big one. And communication between sessions, too. With digital communication being so easy, the boundaries can get blurry. The contract needs to state clearly, how do we handle communication between sessions? Is email okay for scheduling only? What is the response time expectation? Otherwise, you get clients sending long, therapeutic emails at 10 p.m. and expecting a response.
And the crisis protocol. In an office, if a client becomes suicidal, you have a process. You're physically there. Online, you need a contract that includes them providing an emergency contact and their physical location at the start of every single session, just in case you need to call for a wellness check.
It feels like so much more to consider, but it all comes back to the same principle, creating safety and clarity. Whether the room is physical or virtual, the container needs to be strong.
That's the heart of it. Therapeutic contracts are so much more than an administrative formality. When we treat them with the weight they deserve, when they are carefully crafted and collaboratively negotiated, they become the bedrock of ethical and effective practice. They create the security and structure that allows for real, meaningful change to actually happen.
It's a true partnership, right from the first conversation. It's balancing that structure with flexibility, respecting cultural nuances, and adapting to the individual in front of you. It's a skill in and of itself.
It really is. I think if there's one practical takeaway from all of this for clinicians listening, it's a simple reflection exercise.
I love a practical takeaway. What is it?
Just this week, pick one client. You don't have to say anything to them. Just take 5 minutes after their session and ask yourself, what is our psychological contract? What are the unspoken expectations I feel from them? And what are the unspoken expectations I am placing on this work or on them? Just notice it. That awareness alone is transformative.
That's beautiful. It's not about doing anything differently right away. It's just about turning the lights on in that unspoken space, acknowledging the powerful undercurrents we're all swimming in. I love that.
It brings the work back to the relationship, which is where it all begins and ends. And of course, if you're looking for more support in tracking those subtle alliance patterns we talked about, Alliance Genie can really help you reflect on those dynamics session to session without ever storing any recording.